Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Monday episode of Star Wars Lads. So, about a month ago, when I did the video on how to collect Star Wars books, I promised a little bookshelf tour of my own, of my collection, of my book collection. And I've got my shelf here behind me. I've got a different angle because we will be looking at all of my Star Wars books for this week's episode. So, I hope you guys enjoy this. But before we get started, please hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel for Star Wars Lads content every day of the week. We will be releasing videos and shorts every day of the week. So you're going to want to stay tuned with Star Wars Lads for all of that Star Wars content. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, as well as how to adapt videos for both Darth Bane, Dynasty of Evil, and Kenobi. So we'll be having a ton of Star Wars book content here. We also be reviewing Star Wars Brotherhood when that drops in May. So we're going to have a ton of Star Wars book content. So if you're interested in this type of stuff and further collection videos, I want to do a Star Wars toy collection video, comic collection video, a lot of different types of Star Wars collecting videos. I'm really into that side of the Star Wars fandom. So if you're into Star Wars collecting or books or any of that type of stuff, Star Wars Lads is definitely your place to be. So we're going to run these books down, starting with the top shelf, ending with the bottom, and I'll see you guys all after the collection. Enjoy.
All right, so we're going to get started here with the first book, which is Light of the Jedi. This is my books are in chronological order according to BVY. And then, yes, I unfortunately have to stack these books like this because I have no room at all. So a Test of Courage would be next if I could fit it there. Then, of course, Into the Dark, which is the first young adult book in the High Republic. And then we've got the Rising Storm Target cover, which I really like this cover with the lightsabers and all the Jedi like this. I like this way better than the basic cover that everybody else has on all their other versions. So definitely recommend the Target version if you can get it. Then after that would be Race to Crash Point Tower. And then I also got the Target version of Out of the Shadows. I don't know if I love this cover as much as the other one, but it's not bad. And it's, I guess, because I got both of them at Target, I felt like I had to get this one too to complete my Wave 2 High Republic books. Then I did not get a different cover for The Fallen Star. I got the Barnes & Noble version, mainly just because that was the easiest place to go get it. Then the last junior novel in the High Republic here, I got Mission to Disaster. And then to close out the High Republic so far, Midnight Horizon. I don't have Tempest Runner yet. I will get it eventually, just to complete the shelf. Speaking of something I had to find at the right price, I got Duke of Jedi Lost script book, even though I did listen to the audio version first. Then Master and Apprentice, which is obviously one of the better prequel era Star Wars books out there in canon. Then next I have the two Queens books. I have not gotten the third one yet, but I haven't read these ones, so I'm not going to buy the third one probably until I get through these. As you can see, I started Queen's Shadow, but I didn't get very far. I think I read the first chapter. Then over here is the next section, and right here I just stacked a couple of my Legends and Fables books that I have. I got the Legends of Luke Skywalker and the Life Day Treasury. So then there's Dark Disciple, which is definitely one of the harder books to find in canon. This is one of the earlier books that came out, so you will pay a little bit more for this when you can look for it on eBay or wherever. Hopefully you can find it at a used bookshop. That's where I found it. Catalyst, which is actually, to me, one of the most underrated Star Wars canon books yet. Like, honestly, I love this book. I think it's great. I read it before I saw Rogue One. I thought it helped out a lot with understanding some of the backstory and just feeling more attached to Galen and Lyra Erso, as well as Krennic. I highly recommend this one if you guys haven't read this. So then next would be some of my favorite books in canon so far, and that is the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy by Timothy Zahn. These are massive books and a big commitment, but if you get through them, you'll definitely be rewarded. There's a lot of cool, interesting history in here about the Chiss Ascendancy, and really it's just kind of a whole other side to Star Wars. It's kind of its own unique universe in Star Wars. Definitely really enjoyed it, especially if you're kind of fed up with the monotony of Star Wars canon, a lot of times with the stories being just so safe or so similar. The Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy is really something unique and different and really just builds its own world within the Star Wars canon. Next we have Ahsoka, which actually has a really good audiobook because it's narrated by Ashley Eckstein. So these next two are actually pretty hard to find now because they're some of the earliest canon books, and that's Lords of the Sith and Tarkin. I'll pull out Tarkin right after this, but Lords of the Sith, this one was really difficult to find at a good price. I think I got it on eBay, and I paid I want to say like $20 for it. You kind of just have to wait and find a decent deal. Yeah, really good book, kind of underrated and forgotten in the early canon. And then of course Tarkin, which I actually did find at a used bookshop. I used to have the UK version of this, and now I replaced it with the American version because I found it a little nicer quality as well. Most Wanted by Ray Carson, which is obviously about Han and Kira. I've actually heard this is really good. I have not gotten a chance to read this yet, so I picked it up because it was, I think, $1 on eBay. So next is Rebel Rising about Jen Erso, another young adult book. So Thrawn is definitely my favorite of Timothy Zahn's canon Thrawn trilogy. It is kind of a fundamental piece of Star Wars canon EU at this point. Like, reading the books, it is very much so like one of the things that you should read. And I would highly recommend it, especially if you're into Rebels. It is a long book, but if you can get through it, it has a lot of stuff that will really reward you. So A New Dawn, this is a really tough one to find as well because it is the first ever Star Wars canon book. Lost Stars, another classic in the Star Wars canon. Battlefront Twilight Company. So this is one of the earliest canon books that I actually haven't read, so I still need to get into this one. I don't know why I've put it off. I think mainly just because nobody ever really talks about it anymore, but I do want to read it at some point. Leia, Princess of Alderaan, another really good one from Claudia Gray about Leia finding out her parents are in the rebellion. Thrawn Alliances, which a lot of people consider kind of the black sheep of the canon Thrawn trilogy, but I really enjoyed this book. I think it is still my least favorite of the three, but it's a really good one, and I think it's better than most canon books you'll read out there, so definitely pick it up. Thrawn Treason, which again is a little mixed, but I actually really enjoy Thrawn Treason. It is kind of confined into a specific timeline, but it is a really solid book and has a lot of really good Thrawn moments. Ties in very nicely with the Rebels finale, so definitely pick it up if you're a Rebels fan. Battlefront 2 Inferno Squadron is another one I have not yet read. Again, nobody really talks about the Battlefront novels, so I do want to get into this, especially because it's Christy Golden, and I really like her work, but yeah, not a huge fan of the story mode or anything in Battlefront 2, so I wasn't too intrigued to read this, but did pick it up nonetheless. Heir to the Jedi is that last book, I think, out of all of the early canon books that are really hard to find. I found this one on eBay actually for really, really cheap for some reason. Nobody was bidding on it, and I kind of got it at a steal. I think it was like $10. This one goes for a lot as well, but it is the worst Star Wars canon book for most people. And then finally on this top shelf, Alphabet Squadron, which I've said it a bunch of times on our channel. I still have yet to dive into this series, mainly because the first one was so mixed, and then the second and third ones were progressively better, with me hearing that the third one was actually really solid, but the second one, again, was mixed. I don't have the second and third one yet because I wasn't planning on picking them up until I read this one. Hopefully I'll get into it at some point this year. It is probably the biggest series in canon that I have yet to actually read. And then up here again, because they don't fit, Guardians of the Whills, another junior novel about Chirrut and Baze from Rogue One, and then From a Certain Point of View, which I've read a lot of the short stories from, but not all of. Okay, so we're starting to round out the canon portion of my collection, and I'll just go up here to these junior novels. I put them all here because they have the same spine. I have read these. They were early canon, and, you know, they're decent, fun, interesting, but nothing important at all for understanding canon, so you don't really need to pick them up. Smuggler's Run was probably my favorite. Before the Awakening actually has some decent stories, and back when, you know, in 2015, when there was so much hype around The Force Awakens, I really had a fun time reading that, but it has not really stuck with me. And they have contradicted some of the stuff in canon, so definitely not must reads here. Okay, so next is the Aftermath trilogy, which is definitely one of the most controversial series in canon, with Aftermath especially getting very mixed to negative reviews upon its release, and it was kind of sold as the heir to the empire of canon, which it is most definitely not, both in terms of quality and its story expansion and the way it handles significant events. This is a smaller story focusing on a completely new set of characters with only appearances from our original trilogy cast. By the time you get to the end, I think Aftermath Empire's End is actually a really solid book. So Bloodline by Claudia Gray is the book you've seen me rant and rave about on this channel over and over and over again. This is one of my all-time favorite Star Wars books, and it is my favorite Star Wars canon book. It's about Leia in the Senate and a lot of those early warnings of the First Order appearing and her setting up the Resistance and all of that type of stuff, as well as the political plot of all of the people in the Senate finding out that she is the daughter of Darth Vader. It's really well written. Claudia Gray has such a great grasp on Leia, and I really love this book. If you had to pick one book from the canon stuff on my collection to read, definitely read this one.
So Phasma is actually a really, really interesting one, and I was kind of late to the party on this. I read it actually pretty recently, and it is a really cool, unique book. It's very Mad Maxian, not as traditional Star Wars, which I kind of enjoyed, but it also adds a couple layers to Phasma. So, of course, the novelization of The Force Awakens, which I don't have the novelizations of Rogue One or Solo, but the best novelization I would say out of all of the canon novelizations would be The Last Jedi. It adds a lot more to the characters, especially Luke, Kylo Ren, Rey. You get a lot more into their heads than you do in the film. And I would say for the Luke stuff alone, this book is kind of worth it, actually. So I recommend you read it. Resistance Reborn is kind of billed as the culmination of everything pre-2019 in canon. It features characters from the video games, from the comics, from the novels, from the films, from the TV shows. It's got it all. I feel like the story's a little lackluster and underwhelming. It's pretty simple, as well as pretty much any stories we've seen between the episode 8 and 9 timelines. None of them are that exciting or great. The Rise of Skywalker novelization, it adds some stuff to the story. Kind of like I said with The Last Jedi, you get some more character POVs and some stuff inside their head. And then I put this last because Visions is really in its own category in Star Wars. It's not canon, but since Legends is basically everything pre-2014, it's not necessarily Legends either. It's kind of this own pocket universe. I picked this up because I found it really cheap. I have not heard good things about Ronin, so I don't know if I'll ever read this, but I got it on the shelf, and I love the cover art, actually, and the spine as well. The spine looks really cool. Definitely want it on the shelf regardless, but it was super cheap, so that's why I have it. Okay, so we're going to start the Legends section of my collection. Obviously, as you saw, and I said at the beginning, I don't have every canon book, and I don't really have close to every canon book, but I have the vast majority of them. With Legends, there are so many that I'm missing a ton of stuff, especially with the SFBC hardcovers. So bear with me, but this is the collection I have so far, and we're going to start with Revan. Revan's a really interesting book. I would say I really enjoy it, and I enjoy the stuff that's added here. Its portrayal of Revan is very different than it feels like from the game, even though it is Drew Karpyshyn that is writing it. Very unique book, but this one actually is kind of hard to find, as well as a lot of the Old Republic books, and I'm not really sure why they are, because these books are pretty well read. People do like them, but Revan nonetheless is my favorite of the Old Republic books I've read so far. Deceived is the second Old Republic book about Darth Malgus. And so this is the last Old Republic book I have, Fatal Alliance. I have not gotten to read this one yet because I don't have Annihilation, which is very hard to find, and I would say the hardest of the Old Republic books to find, but Fatal Alliance seems to be the easiest one to find, so you can probably pick this up on eBay for relatively cheap or find it at most used bookstores. So Darth Bane, Path of Destruction, and Darth Bane, Dynasty of Evil. Obviously, if you've seen my How to Adapt videos, you know I love these books. I don't have Rule of Two in hardcover. I only have it in paperback. I'm really looking for a steal of a price on those on Rule of Two, but because I've read it, it's hard for me to just pull the trigger, but I do want it to kind of complete that collection. But I love these books, and I do really enjoy the cover art for these two. Rule of Two is not my favorite cover art, though, so maybe another reason why I haven't pulled the trigger on it. Darth Plagueis, which is my all-time favorite Star Wars book. I absolutely love everything about this, all three parts in the book, the entire huge branching story, everything that leads up directly to Phantom Menace and with Phantom Menace. If you had to pick one single book from my entire collection to pick up, it would be Darth Plagueis. Unfortunately, it is a little expensive and hard to find, but I think it's worth it. Just pick up the paperback if you just want to read it. But it is worth it because this is such an amazing book. And I love James Luceno's writing. I know it gets a little wordy for some people, but I really dig it. And I love the history here. Next is The Legacy of the Jedi, which is kind of a compilation of a couple of the junior books. I have not actually read this one yet, but I do appreciate the cover and the stories that are in it. It sounds really cool. Eventually I'll get to it. The SFBC copy of Darth Maul Shadowhunter, and again, another one I found really cheap at a used bookstore. Terry Brooks' Phantom Menace novelization has a lot of different covers, but of course I had to get the one with Obi-Wan Kenobi on it because he's my favorite Star Wars character. Rogue Planet, another book I have yet to read, but I really like this cover. This is the SFBC hardcover of Outbound Flight. I can't wait to do a How to Adapt of this because it will tie in very nicely with my How to Adapt the original Thrawn trilogy. But again, everything Timothy Zahn touches in Star Wars Legends and even Star Wars canon is pretty much gold. So definitely a cool one to pick up and to have. The Approaching Storm, which now looking at this kind of just strikes me because it's basically the same cover for Brotherhood that's coming out soon. I'll throw that graphic up here so you can see it now. But yeah,
The Clone Wars novelization by Karen Traviss. I've yet to read this, but Karen Traviss is obviously awesome, so looking forward to that eventually. The Clone Wars Wild Space, which is actually the only paperback I have on this shelf, and mainly just because it's the right size and it fits that little hole right there. This is a pretty valuable one. This is the SFBC hardcover of MedStar, which is a really cool duology about Barriss Offee. So in hardcover, I am actually missing the SFBC hardcovers of the Republic Commando books, but I do have Order 66, which was the only one out of the Republic Commando books that actually got its own hardcover. So I got this in a lot that I bought on eBay. Labyrinth of Evil and Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader, two really awesome books about Anakin and Vader. I have read the Revenge of the Sith book that goes in between the Dark Lord trilogy of the books here, but yeah, I just haven't pulled the trigger on buying one. I don't know why. I read it at the library a long time ago. I just never found a copy that's in like great condition. I kind of want it to be, especially because that book's really cheap. A book that's not very cheap though is Kenobi, which ranges around $80 to $100 a book, if not more. This is a very tough book to find, but it will be the subject of our How to Adapt video for May, as well as our Star Wars Legends book club. So keep an eye out for those. This is amazing. John Jackson Miller does some great work here. And I mean, it's Obi-Wan, so this cover as well, it's just everything about this book is awesome. So we've got the Han Solo Adventures trilogy here. Han Solo at Star's End and Han Solo's Revenge aren't too difficult to find. You can get them for probably 15 to 20 bucks on eBay at most. Han Solo and the Lost Legacy is pretty difficult to find, and I actually got that as a gift, so I'm not sure how much whoever got it for me paid for it, but it is a tough one to find. Splinter of the Mind's Eye and the SFBC hardcover. This was the subject of our Legends book club last Friday for April, so check that out. This is a very interesting read. You can see our thoughts there. But I actually found this hardcover in an antique shop for some reason. I don't know. It was all wrapped in this weird plastic, but it's in really, really great shape. So I guess check out your local antique shops. They might have something like this. So here's a really beat up copy of the Empire Strikes Back novelization in Science Fiction Book Club hardcover. This was actually just thrown into a lot when I bought something else on eBay, and I didn't even know the guy was giving me this, so I guess if you're watching, thank you. Star Wars Tales, which collects Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales of the Bounty Hunters, and Tales from Jabba's Palace. This is a really cool compilation book. I found this at a used bookstore for like $8. This is a very hard one to find, so I kind of hit the jackpot last year. You'll see some of these later with the new Jedi Order as well. And then finally, the last book on this shelf, Shadows of the Empire, which we all know what it's about. It's a good book. This is the regular standard hardcover version. Okay, so we made it to the bottom of the shelf, starting with Return of the Jedi. Again, this was in that lot with The Empire Strikes Back. I did not buy this book or The Empire Strikes Back, but I got 2 SFBC hardcovers for these books, so very cool. A little beat up, but a lot better condition than Empire Strikes Back. Bounty Hunter Wars is another one of the tougher books to find out of the 90s Bantam era of science fiction book club hardcovers. This collects all 3 books from the Bounty Hunter Wars. The Truce at Bakura science fiction book club hardcover. Again, this one is very easy to find, very cheap. As we enter the Bantam era, all these books are really easy to find, so you can pick this one up pretty much anywhere you go. I think I'm going to run through these pretty fast, but The Courtship of Princess Leia is another easy one to find. Tatooine Ghost, which is kind of one of the only non-Bantam era books that fits into the chronology here within the Bantam era post Return of the Jedi. Of course, the sacred texts of Star Wars books, the original Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn still holds up, still magnificent. Definitely read these books. The Jedi Academy trilogy, which actually this is the SFBC hardcover, which I actually have not opened. I have all these in paperback, so I've read those versions, but yeah, this is a really cool one to have. Again, also not that expensive. If you're looking for a SFBC hardcover to just start out with, you can pick this one up for between like $20 and $40 depending on the condition. My copy of I, Jedi is in the standard sized hardcover format. And we have Children of the Jedi. I have this in SFBC hardcover. Planet of Twilight, which this is in standard size. The Crystal Star, which is often considered one of the worst Star Wars books ever. A lot of you are going to be super annoyed by this, but the New Rebellion in standard. So I basically go from standard SFBC, standard SFBC. A lot of size changes, but that's just how I found them. And I like to buy them the cheapest way I can find them, especially with these Bantam books. Spectre of the Past and Vision of the Future, or The Hand of Thrawn duology. These are 2 great books by Timothy Zahn. Looking forward to doing a How to Adapt with these later. I kind of want to wait till after The Mandalorian Season 3 comes out, though, because that will kind of set up how we can plug this into canon later in the future. Survivor's Quest, standard size hardcover by Timothy Zahn. And then now we're getting into the New Jedi Order, which I have a surprisingly large amount of in hardcover with all the SFBCs out there. So this is Vector Prime. This is the first book in that series. And then Dark Tide, which was actually an eBay purchase that I found for pretty cheap. This is in great condition, a really, really nice version. One that's not in quite as good condition, but I did get it at a used bookshop for like $5, is Agents of Chaos, which is a harder one to find. Same with Edge of Victory, which again is in not the most ideal condition, but for $5 at a used bookshop, that is a lot cheaper than you're going to pay online. And then I'm kind of rounding out the SFBC books that I have in the New Jedi Order with Dark Journey, Traitor, and Final Prophecy. These are, again, in really solid shape for used bookshops, so I'm really glad I found these because these are really hard to find. The Dark Nest Science Fiction Book Club hardcover. I got this off of Facebook, actually. I don't have too many of the Legacy of the Force books because the Science Fiction Book Club hardcovers are very tough to find, but I have Betrayal, which is the first standard size book. And the only two SFBC hardcovers I have with Legacy of the Force are Bloodlines and Exile. And then rounding out the Legacy of the Force books I have in hardcover is Invincible. So we are getting close here. Here's Millennium Falcon by James Lucino, and I do have the vast majority of the Fate of the Jedi series. I think I'm only missing one or two. So starting with Outcast and Omen, then we've got Abyss and Backlash, Conviction, and an SFBC version of Vortex, and then of course finally Apocalypse. So I'm going to finish this off with just a few of the odds and ends I have in paperback and some of the other formats here. I do have a paperback version of Darth Bane Path of Destruction, as well as The Rule of Two, and Dynasty of Evil. Then I have a paperback version of Maul Lockdown with Legends banner, Coruscant Knights Jedi Twilight, which if you've seen my how to collect Star Wars books video, you know this one in hardcover is insanely hard to find. And then since I don't have any of the Lando Calrissian Adventures in hardcover, I do have Lando Calrissian in the Mind Harp of Shrew. This is a first printing paperback. And the original Star Wars paperback, Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. I need the first printing, though. This is not the first printing. I also have the Han Solo trilogy in paperback. I have Paradise Snare, The Hutt Gambit, and Rebel Dawn. These are also some super random ones that I just pulled out of book 1 of the Black Fleet Crisis, Before the Storm. I don't know where my other books of the Jedi Academy trilogy are. I know they're somewhere, but here's Dark Apprentice. Also Showdown at Centerpoint from the Corellian trilogy, the 3rd book. And then finally the random last book of the Bounty Hunter Wars, the hard merchandise. Here's some fun ones to collect in paperback. The Young Jedi Knights series, so this is Shadow Academy, Heirs of the Force, and The Lost Ones. I do want to get the SFBC copies of these as well. There's a bunch of them. I think there's 3 different books that have all these collected. So these were given to me by a friend, and I need to find the rest of them, but books 5 and 6 of Star Wars Boba Fett, the junior novels from the Clone Wars series. I'm also working on building out my Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest collections, but this is the first book, Jedi Apprentice, The Rising Force, the 4th book, The Mark of the Crown, the 5th book, The Defenders of the Dead, the 6th book, The Uncertain Path, the 8th book, The Day of Reckoning, the 12th book, The Evil Experiment, and the 15th book, The Death of Hope. This is the only Jedi Quest book I have. It is the 2nd book, The Trail of the Jedi. I also have some from the Last of the Jedi series, starting with book number 2, Dark Warning, book number 3, Underworld, book 4, Death on Naboo, and book 7, Secret Weapon. I'm trying to build out the X-Wing series in first print paperbacks, but so far I only have Rogue Squadron, the 1st book, Wedge's Gamble, the 2nd book, The Krytos Trap, the 3rd book, and Iron Fist, the 6th book. I also have Dark Nest, The Joiner King. Then I have all but one of the Legacy of the Force collection in paperback, starting with Betrayal, Bloodlines, Tempest, Exile, Sacrifice, Inferno, Fury, and Revelation.
Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. Comment below, let me know what you thought of my collection, my bookshelf tour. Let me know what's your favorite Star Wars book, or what's some books on my shelf that you think are cool that you don't have, maybe ones you do have that you love. It's such a fun side of the Star Wars fandom that definitely has a big collector base, so I'd love to talk Star Wars books down in the comments with all of you. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. Star Wars content 7 days a week. You'll want to stay tuned for all of that content. And if you haven't yet, please like the video. So if you haven't yet, please also follow us on social media at Star Wars Lads, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We will be posting all of our shorts on TikTok as well. We're everywhere right now, so we got a ton of content coming. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Let us know what you like and what you dislike about our content. If you have any suggestions for future shows, let us know. And thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.